Hello everyone, welcome to Lush and Salty Aquariums. My name is Stefan. Thank you for coming to my channel and thank you for sharing with me the 135 gallon freshwater display tank sitting in my dining room in the fabulous city of Chicago. This is the tank my family sees all the time, and this is the mother of all my fish tanks for sure. I just did a 40% water change. I do a 40% water change once a week on almost all of my tanks. And I understand the virtue of keeping a tank that does not require a water change. And maybe this one doesn't, the way I like to do it. But when you weigh the pros and cons, and you look at the intangibles, things we're gonna talk about in this video, I opted to do a water change once a week, approximately 40% on almost all of my aquariums. I love the effect a water change has on the fish in my aquarium. I can't scientifically quantify it. I'm sure the parameters obviously will change in the water after a water change. You'll have a higher pH if you're in Chicago, as I am, than right before you did the water change. You're likely to have less nitrates, obviously, because that's a primary reason for doing a water change. But the intangible reason I like to do a water change, and I'm not trying to be cute here, but the intangible reason I like to do a water change is because I like to do water changes. It gives me visceral contact with my tank. It forces, and forces isn't the right word, it seduces me into being fully involved and engaged with each and every aquarium. I assemble the python that I use to pull water out. I make sure everything's a-okay with the fittings. And as I pull the water out, I use that water to water all the house plants in our apartment. I look at it, determine if it has any particulates in it, because I put some in a bucket before I drain it all into the sink. And I just assess it on a visceral level with my eyes and my hands and my nose. And that's an intangible, right? It isn't going to be measured with a test kit, although I do that too. Another intangible reason I like to do water changes is because I believe the vast majority of my fish like it when I do water changes. They become vigorous and sprightly. It's a known fact that adding cool water to a fish tank mimics the effect of a rainstorm in the Amazon or other environments, which triggers spawning responses in a great number of fishes, especially Coreodoras, of which most of us keep at least one species of those. So, you know, I'm no scientist, but if fish are getting frisky because of a vast change in their water, that's healthy. Sick people don't have sex, at least physically sick people, and physically sick fish don't get frisky. I've noticed in the past, and this could be on me, that in tanks where I don't do water changes, over time things just don't look as fresh and vigorous and lively as they do here. As you look at these wonderful, look at that glorious swordtail with the veal tail, and then the pancake-sized millennium rainbow fish, the glorious bicolor of that male bosemani, and the glimmering jewels of these dwarf neon rainbow fish. Unbelievable. I find the colors, the finnage, the eyes, everything pops after I do a water change. I mean, yeah, I'm being poetic and perhaps dramatic, but I'm making a video about something I love, so I hope I'm being poetic and perhaps dramatic. I notice positive change when I do a water change, and above and beyond anything else I can think of, the scientific stuff, the pros and the cons, that is a fundamental reason why I like to do water changes. Now, I don't want to say the plants are indifferent when I change 40% of the water once a week, but I can't notice a remarkable difference in their growth or their health because they're a different kind of living thing. I won't belabor the obvious, but they are slower to reveal their health to us. A dying plant, in some cases, you don't notice it's sick until it's too late. And in any event, I'm sure adding fresh, clean water, for the most part, can't possibly hurt, for the most part, most of the plants we keep in our aquariums. You know, obviously, you have to treat your water before you add it back into your tank. I use Seachum Prime. I get one of those like gallon milk sizes. I don't know how many liters that is, but the big size, it's on auto delivery, 1 bottle every 3 months. And that's how much I use of that, because as I said, I do water changes once a week, approximately 40% on, at times, all my tanks, but there is a tank or two that I might go bi-weekly on the water change, and that's because one of them is a partial black water system, and I like to keep the water more acidic, a lower pH, so adding Chicago water to that tank would negate the goal there. And also, I'm experimenting with how and what the reactions are in the creatures in that aquarium with a little bit less vigorous a water change. So I am open-minded, as we all should be, and I would hope and pray that we can be more open-minded as people in our society moving forward, not just in this hobby. But I am more likely to not add fresh, clean Chicago water treated with Seachum Prime to that partial black water tank, as well as I refrain from adding it at times on the 12-gallon bookshelf aquarium that is so heavily planted both above and beneath the water that I honestly think there's only a few gallons of actual water real estate, and in many ways it's replicating an environment that wouldn't see a big infusion of new water, sort of like, I don't know, the edge of a swamp or something. Of course it rains in swamps, so of all the things I said in this video, that's probably the most asinine. But the tonnage of plants, if I can rephrase the argument, allows me to get away with not adding water all the time. Now, there's clearly a tonnage of plants in here, but it is different than in that 12-gallon tank, because there's a lot of flow, there's a lot of air, you know, not aeration, but fluctuation and dispersal at the top of the aquarium from the currents that the sump filter provides. And there's a lot more going on in this tank than in that other aquarium, which is truly more about the plants than the fish. Here, it's pretty even Steven, but you can see from that kaleidoscope, that intense kaleidoscope of color, that panoply of beauty. It's just awe-inspiring to me. I can't believe I was able to achieve this effect. I knew I'd have some kind of interesting aquarium in my dining room here. And it wasn't easy at first, and I was afraid I was gonna have to settle in so many ways. Maybe settle with having the kind of tank that is predominantly fish only with just the easiest of plants, or the other way around, you know, all Vallisneria, all one intense plantscape with maybe easier species of fish than some of the ones I have in here. Although I wouldn't call any of these in here difficult, but there are some intermediate and mixed with the easy. Make no mistake, just because these are live bears, that doesn't mean they're easy. They've been hybridized so they're sensitive and delicate. And rainbow fish are boisterous and vigorous, for sure. But if something goes wrong with one fish in here, as it has with my angelfish, everything becomes vulnerable. And I did have some difficulties with Canalenus worms. I had it in this female, this simple Scalare, the classic angelfish. If you had a kid draw an angelfish from memory, this is it right here. Now I have a much bigger angelfish who also was sick, and he, for whatever reason, I don't think it's sickness, is just choosing to be down here. And this is the veal tail variation on the classic striped or silver angelfish. And finally, since we're on the topic of angelfish, I've got a beautiful black-veiled angel in here as well. And I certainly can't introduce it without finding it. Enter stage right. He does have a bruise on the top of his shoulder there. I think that's from boinking into something, which does happen. I mean, it's not that fish are clumsy, but they're in an artificial environment, and when they get spooked, which you have to be sensitive to. Some people don't power their lights on all in one fell swoop so as to not spook their fish. If you accidentally hit the tank when you're vacuuming, or somebody drops something, the vibration and the noise, all the fish feel that. It can be seismic, and they will shoot off in different directions to avoid whatever that disturbance is, and accidents happen. I have to monitor that sore up there, whatever it is, that scar, to make sure it doesn't become infected. Just as you would if you had a child and he or she came home with a bad cut. You know, you have to treat it clean it anyway. Now obviously cleaning and treating that wound is impossible, and I'm not going to add a antifungal into this aquarium for one fish. I mean, the greater good, there's got to be 100 fishes in here at least. Look at this longfin plecostomus. There's a whole bunch of those in here, and I believe this variety has spawned. I know that variety has spawned. I see babies all the time. I also have these 2 pairs of Bolivian rams. Here's one pair, and they get along really well, all 4 do, which is, you know, makes me joyful. I thought maybe the ram cichlid one pair would be all that this tank, even at its size, could handle, but I have 4, and they seem to do fine. I don't see spawning behavior, but they've been with me a long time, and they've grown to full adulthood in here, and they get along famously. That's Bucer philander, by the way, the That could be the Godzilla variety. I could be wrong though. And this might just be the brownie or the kadang. There's so many kinds of bush plants. I love them all, but I get confused. And sometimes I just refer to some of the more common ones, assuming that that's likely what I planted. Even though planting is not exactly the right word, it's an epiphyte, so that's what I stuck into the crevice there. But it's quadrupled in size, as have most of the plants in here. I pulled out so many of these cryptocorn to leave just a thin strand, and here they come. They're coming back vigorously. And of course, Vallisneria does what it does. And floating plants do what they do. Now, when I did that 40% water change, I always take out a crap ton of frogbit water lettuce. That's why there's not that much of it, at least as we do the shot from here. But trust me, about 20% of the water is covered with it now, and in a few days that will be 50%. And I don't want to block too much light, but I love the effect of all those roots hanging down and also the natural filtration it provides. You know, funny thing about this, pulling out a bunch of the biggest ones every week actually is like pulling out a dirty vacuum bag, to mention vacuum again. When you pull those out and throw them out, the roots tend to be kind of dark and heavy, and they're just laden with crap they pulled out of the water column. And so just throw them away. I mean, you could repurpose them for sure, but you can just throw them away, like throwing away a dirty filter, because in a way that's what they are. All right, everybody, I hope you appreciated this as much as I enjoyed giving this video. I mean, I love making videos and sharing these wonderful ecosystems with you. And I mean, I don't ever intend to be arrogant, and I hope I come across that way. I thought this tank would never turn out this good, and so it is with gratitude and, you know, sheer awe that I share it with you and confide in you in that fashion. Okay, everybody, as always, keep your hands in the tank, and ciao for now.